The sharp crack of a slap shattered the opulent hush of Los Angeles's most exclusive art exhibition, where neon light bathed million-dollar canvases in an otherworldly glow. Elise Nguyen, 7 months pregnant, crumpled to the polished marble floor, arms instinctively wrapping around her swollen belly as tears streaked down her cheeks, mixing with the warm sting of blood. Across from her stood her husband, Marcus Lee, a celebrated millionaire, his hand still raised, an image burned into the stunned gazes of hundreds of elite collectors, and the smirk of his mistress, Zoe Kim. Cameras flashed. Gasps rippled. Within hours, the footage ignited a global firestorm of outrage. But the world had yet to uncover the darker truth that Elise was the real artist behind the stolen masterpieces on display. Now, the question was no longer whether she could survive this humiliation, but whether she could rise, reclaim her name, and fight for the justice owed to her and the child she carried. Beneath the molten gold of a Los Angeles afternoon, Elise Nguyen once believed her life was a flawless canvas, where bold brushstrokes danced with the American dream she had chased since girlhood. Born in a humble village along Vietnam's Mekong River, she had painted to outrun days heavy with hardship, each stroke a whispered prayer for a brighter tomorrow. Arriving in America with nothing but raw talent and an unshakable hunger, she was swept into the electric pulse of the City of Angels. It was there, at a modest downtown art exhibit awash in neon and street color, that she met Marcus Lee. With his disarming smile and the glittering prestige of owning the famed Lee Gallery, he seemed like the missing piece in her masterpiece. He vowed to lift her art into the stratosphere, turning her untamed dreams into shimmering reality. 6 months later, they wed in Malibu, the waves crashing like ancient blessings on a future painted in light. But beneath the satin and champagne, Elise slowly learned the price of her choice. At just 25, she had traded her own rising star for his shadow, spending endless nights in a hidden studio where the whirl of her brush mirrored the quiet ache of an immigrant's solitude. Each abstract piece she birthed pulsed with her story, bursts of color for hope, deep shadows for homesickness. Marcus hung them in his gallery under his own name, selling them to Hollywood's elite for millions. She told herself it was love, a way to build their life together. But at 7 months pregnant, everything shifted. The gentle kicks within her felt like a lighthouse in dark waters, reminding her she was more than the sum of her sacrifices. The late-night calls, the perfume clinging to his shirts, the growing chill in his gaze, each sign etched suspicion deeper into her heart. One midnight in their glass-walled penthouse above the Pacific, her pulse roared in her ears as she unlocked his phone. The screen bloomed with messages from Zoe Kim, the celebrated critic who had once crowned Marcus's works genius. "Tonight, he'll prove our love," followed by a heart emoji. The words cut like glass. Zoe, statuesque and magnetic, was a fixture in the art world. Elise had endured her syrupy greetings at events, each one steeped in smugness. Now those praises rang hollow, mocking. Had her gift been stolen to feed this affair? Tears blurred her vision, but a spark ignited within. She would not let her child's future be built on lies. The night of the Beverly Hills exhibition arrived. Under chandeliers blazing like constellations, the city's wealthiest milled with flutes of ruby wine, pausing to admire her paintings, each labeled Marcus Lee. Elise, her body slowed by the weight she carried, moved among them with a practiced smile. Then Zoe appeared, draped in black silk, her smirk a dagger cloaked in sweetness. "Sister Elise, you're so lucky to have Marcus, a true genius," she purred, her eyes glittering with conquest. The air thickened. Deceit spread through the room like ink bleeding across linen. The dam inside Elise broke. Months of swallowed humiliation surged into her voice. "Zoe, I know everything. Marcus, explain yourself." Silence slammed down. Collectors froze mid-sip, phones lifted to capture the scene. Marcus stood rigid, his face a mask of heat and shame. Zoe edged back, but her gaze never wavered. Then a sharp kick inside her, as if her son himself urged her forward. She was no longer just the betrayed wife. She was an artist reclaiming her stolen name, a mother defending her child's tomorrow. And under the glittering light, her pain transformed, becoming a portrait of defiance the whole room would never forget. "All right, Before we dive further, tap that like button and subscribe if this story's hitting your heart. Drop a comment sharing where you're watching from and the time on your clock. I love knowing the corners of the world we're all connected from. The sound of the slap echoed like thunder striking through the serene space of the gallery, where the sparkling chandeliers suddenly turned icy cold. Marcus Lee, his face flushed crimson with a storm of rage mixed with shame in front of the elite crowd, delivered a forceful blow to Elise's cheek, the slap leaving a blazing red mark like a furious brushstroke on the canvas of her life. Elise crumpled to the cool marble floor, her hand clutching her face as blood trickled from the scratch, her body quivering but her spirit refusing to break. The child in her womb kicked with fierce strength, like a silent whisper reminding her to stay resilient for that precious little life. The surrounding crowd was profoundly shocked, murmurs rippling like undercurrents. Mr. Victor Reyes, the billionaire art collector from Hollywood with a collection worth millions, shook his head in deep disappointment, muttering about the utter shamefulness of the act. Zoe Kim stood beside Marcus, her lips tightly pressed to conceal the fleeting triumph flashing in her eyes, as if she had foreseen this very moment of collapse. Would that slap truly mark the end of the dream, or was it merely the spark for an unexpected uprising? The secretly recorded video by a guest in the crowd spread rapidly across TikTok and Twitter, exploding within the first hour with the hashtag number Marcus Lee Slap, drawing millions of views from all over America. The image of Elise collapsing, her heavy pregnant belly amid the opulent setting, touched the hearts of countless women, those who had endured betrayal and emotional violence in a male-dominated world. Social media erupted in waves. Posts sharing personal stories, from homemakers in the Midwest to young artists in New York, all condemning Marcus as a symbol of the rot within the upper echelons. Elise was rushed back to the penthouse, overlooking the Pacific Ocean, where the rhythmic crashing of waves now felt distant and lonely. Her body ached from the wound, but her spirit was shattered even more, the pain of betrayal piling onto those months of silent sacrifices. Marcus, now revealing his manipulative nature fully, sneered at his wife's suffering, claiming the paintings were his and that Zoe was the one who truly understood him. But behind that confident exterior, he had ensnared both women, promising Zoe a shared future to exploit her for promoting the gallery, while concealing forged contracts on ownership rights documents proving the true talent belonged to Elise. Have you ever wondered behind a triumphant smile how many secrets lie waiting to be exposed, leaving you regretful if you don't keep watching? Zoe, once a victim of manipulation by powerful men in the art industry, began to feel a surge of remorse flooding in as she watched the viral video. She gripped her phone tightly, memories of her own exploitations rushing back like dark patches in an abstract painting. Marcus had lured her with sweet promises, turning her into a tool to boost the gallery's fame. But now, the sight of Elise collapsing made Zoe realize she too was just a pawn in his game. Meanwhile, Elise lay in her hospital bed, tears streaming down and blending with her physical agony, questioning why the husband who once inspired her had become her enemy. The kick from her unborn child shone like a lighthouse, igniting the inner strength she had buried for the sake of love. The media storm hit with ferocious intensity. Reputable outlets like the LA Times and Vanity Fair published scathing articles portraying Marcus as the rotten core of the elite, exposing the downfall of those who seemed untouchable. Women across America shared their stories, transforming Number Stand with Elise into a movement where thousands voiced out on women's rights and stolen talents. What would happen when victims unexpectedly ally, and would remorse be enough to shift the balance? Amid that chaos, Elise received a call from her sister Lan, a sharp lawyer from San Francisco with extensive experience fighting for women's rights. Lan flew down immediately, bringing the first pieces of evidence. Old sketches from Elise's early immigrant days, with familiar strokes proving she was the true creator of those masterpieces. Elise, though exhausted, felt a glimmer of hope flickering as she hugged her sister tightly, memories of their childhood in Vietnam flooding back where the two sisters had shared dreams of a better life in America. Lan whispered words of encouragement, outlining a plan to turn the tables, transforming pain into a weapon. Meanwhile, Zoe wrestled inwardly, questioning if she dared side with Elise to atone or remain silent in the shadows of manipulation. The media storm raged on, unabated, with profound articles analyzing how the male-dominated art world had robbed women of their talents, stirring empathy from American audiences, those who saw Elise as an icon of resilient strength. In the penthouse still lingering with Zoe's strange perfume scent, Elise sat beside her sister Lan. Old sketches spread wide across the table like fragments of memories reviving from the past. Elise had never publicly declared herself the true artist, a secret she buried deep from her childhood days in Vietnam, where she drew on scraps of paper to escape poverty and the loneliness of a little girl dreaming of vast horizons. Migrating to America with only a pencil and yearning as her baggage, she poured her entire soul into abstract brushstrokes, where vibrant colors symbolized the immigrant journey, patches of hopeful green interspersed with shadows of estrangement. Marcus had exploited that in a cunning way. He pressured her to sign a collaboration contract under a romantic guise, but in reality it was theft of ideas, claiming all credit to build the Lee Gallery empire. Those paintings sold for millions to Hollywood collectors, but Elise received only a meager share, like faint strokes on the edge of the main canvas. She once believed his words that he would handle the rest, but now she realized he was merely a thief of talent, turning her dreams into tools for his personal ambition. With Lan's steadfast support, Elise began the journey of gathering evidence, each step like a brushstroke painting the path to justice. While Marcus was busy handling the media with Zoe, trying to extinguish the storm of public opinion with fabricated excuses, the two sisters quietly infiltrated the hidden safe in the penthouse, a cold metal box containing dark secrets. Elise's hand trembled as she unlocked it, and then the forged contract appeared, her signature clumsily faked, but enough to deceive the art world. Lan exclaimed, in joy mixed with outrage, calling it the key to unlocking the door to freedom. Those documents not only proved Marcus's manipulation, but also ignited the inner strength within Elise, transforming the pain from the slap into a burning drive. At the same time, Victor Reyes, the billionaire collector with a keen eye, reached out proactively, his voice full of suspicion after watching the viral video. He admitted being a longtime fan of Marcus's art, but had always felt the style was too feminine, too profound, too deep, not matching his masculine image. Elise, with a resolute voice, revealed the truth. She was the one creating those masterpieces, and Marcus was nothing but a fraud. The first element of surprise arrived like a shifting wind when Zoe called Elise on a pouring rainy afternoon in Los Angeles. Zoe, once exploited by men in the art industry to climb the ranks of fame, now wrestled with surging remorse after witnessing the slap video. She confessed that Marcus had deceived her too, promising to divorce Elise to marry her, but in truth using her merely as a tool to sell paintings, turning her praises into promotional weapons. Zoe's heart, once hardened by repeated manipulations, now softened when thinking of Elise, another woman victimized by the same male-dominated system. Deciding to switch sides, Zoe provided secret emails and recordings, sharp evidence proving Marcus's manipulation, from false promises to plans to eliminate Elise from the will. Elise, despite the agony from the double betrayal, accepted the collaboration for the sake of her soon-to-be-born son, seeing it as a necessary step to protect the future. The evidence gathered like a complete painting, where each piece from Lan's old sketches, the forged contract from the safe, Victor's testimony, to Zoe's documents painted the true portrait of Marcus, a greedy man hidden behind a glamorous facade. Elise felt the power spreading from the American women's community, those sharing stories on social media, turning Number Stand with Elise into a symbol of resilience. Her tears now were no longer signs of weakness, but sources of inspiration for the journey of rebirth. Victor promised to testify, using his influence to accuse Marcus publicly, while Zoe, with a trembling voice, committed to standing by Elise to the end. All of it formed a solid support network, where sisterhood, atonement through remorse, and justice converged, promising a climactic confrontation in court. The trial in Los Angeles transformed into a dramatic stage of high-stakes tension, where glaring light from the windows illuminated faces etched with strain, and Elise stepped in with her bulging belly, her gaze resolute like a queen rising from the ashes. From the solid support network she had built with evidence from Lan, the forged contract from the safe, Zoe's unexpected testimony, and Victor's commitment, Elise was now ready to confront the man who had stolen her talent and her trust. Marcus sat there, surrounded by an expensive team of lawyers, attempting to justify that Elise was merely an assistant and the slap was just a momentary reaction under pressure. But Elise, with a voice calm yet brimming with power, declared she was no victim but the true artist, presenting original sketches from her early immigrant days, the forged contract proving the deceit, and testimony from Zoe, the one Marcus had manipulated with false promises of love to praise his paintings, now admitting the real talent belonged to Elise. Zoe took the witness stand, her voice trembling but fierce, recounting how Marcus had exploited her to promote the gallery, promising a shared future only to conceal the truth that those emotionally charged abstract paintings with vibrant colors symbolizing the immigrant journey had all sprung from Elise's hands. The crowd outside the court erupted in cheers, chants echoing through the walls, while the hashtag number Justice for Elise spread widely on social media, turning into a nationwide movement where American women shared personal stories of stolen talent and betrayal. Victor Reyes, with his prestige from a Hollywood collection, testified convincingly he had bought the paintings thinking they were Marcus's, but now accused him of being a fraud, committing to support Elise by investing in her future. The courtroom atmosphere grew suffocating, each testimony like a brushstroke painting the picture of justice, where Elise was no longer a fragile shadow but a symbol of unyielding strength, ignited by the gentle kicks of her son in her womb. The court's verdict rang out like thunder in a clear sky, declaring Marcus lost ownership of the gallery and must compensate Elise with millions of dollars, a ruling that not only returned property but also acknowledged her stolen talent. Marcus collapsed in his seat, his face paling, eyes once full of arrogance now flooded with panic, realizing his empire had crumbled under the weight of truth. Elise smiled softly, her hand caressing her belly, whispering inwardly that she had done it for her son, the true inspiration helping her overcome the darkness. Emotions surged throughout the courtroom. Tears streamed down the cheeks of supporters, applause echoing like an affirmation that women could lead, especially in the male-dominated world of art. American audiences, especially women from all walks of life, from single mothers in the Midwest to young artists in New York, felt an exhilarating thrill, witnessing Elise's rise, turning pain into victory, igniting hope that justice always exists for those who dare to fight. After the trial, Elise hugged Lan and Zoe tightly outside the courthouse, tears streaming down not from sorrow but from liberating joy, whispering thanks to her sisters for proving that women could lead in the battle against manipulation. Comments on YouTube and social media overflowed with praise. "She's an icon," one person wrote, reflecting the profound empathy from American audiences, those who saw in Elise a reflection of themselves in the journey overcoming adversity. The Number Justice for Elise movement didn't stop at the courtroom but spread as a source of inspiration, encouraging women everywhere to share stories, turning personal drama into lessons on inner strength. Elise, now freer than ever, felt the Los Angeles sea breeze caressing like a blessing for the future, where she would paint new works about motherhood and rebirth. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. Marcus Lee, once the king of Los Angeles art, now lay in utter ruin under the crushing weight of the court's verdict, where justice had stripped away the glamorous veneer to expose his manipulative core. From the pinnacle of his renowned gallery, He now had to witness the doors being sealed shut, clients boycotting in droves like a raging wave, forcing him to liquidate assets to pay off debts, those paintings once bearing his name, now symbols of his downfall. Zoe, with genuine remorse surging after the trial, publicly apologized on social media, admitting she had been wrong to join in that betrayal drama and viewing Elise as her true source of inspiration. She decided to abandon the trap-filled art criticism industry, shifting to support young female artists, transforming her painful experiences into motivation to uplift hidden talents. Marcus, in a desperate effort, tried contacting Elise to beg for forgiveness, acknowledging his mistakes, but Elise responded with resolute coldness, affirming that he had stolen her dreams and now she would reclaim it all. Would Marcus's downfall stop there, or were there deeper secrets waiting to be exposed? The second element of surprise struck like a whirlwind when Lan, with her sharp lawyer expertise, dug deeper into the safe, discovering not only the forged contract but also Marcus's personal diary, where he admitted stealing ideas from Elise to build his personal empire, viewing it as a clever strategy without a shred of regret. Those lines, written in cold penmanship, became fatal evidence, allowing Lan to file additional lawsuits, leading to a permanent ban on Marcus practicing in the field, a blow that cost him not just the gallery but his reputation in the art world. American audiences, following through social media and press, felt an overwhelming sense of satisfaction, with floods of comments like, "He deserved it," reflecting profound empathy for victims of male-dominated manipulation. Elise, now free from shackles, began painting anew, where warm colors like California dawn blended with themes of motherhood, each brushstroke whispering of inner strength and hopeful rebirth. Have you ever wondered, behind the failure of the villain, how many lessons await, leaving you regretful if you don't follow the next rise? Marcus, now living in isolation, had to face widespread consequences. Collectors who once adored him turned their backs, turning him into a prime example of the fake upper crust collapse in Hollywood. Zoe, on her path to atonement, joined workshops supporting women, sharing her story to warn the young, turning remorse into a guiding flame for the next generation. Elise, with support from Victor Reyes, sensed life's new flow. Those motherhood paintings not only sold out but inspired American women, from single mothers to struggling artists, reminding that stolen talent could be reclaimed through unyielding strength. The online community exploded with number Elise Rises, where thousands shared how her story ignited hope in their own lives, turning personal drama into a broad movement. What would happen when the victim becomes the leader, and would that healing journey bring new surprises? From the ashes of the old gallery, Elise built a new foundation, where she not only reclaimed everything but multiplied it. Manifold, those warm motherhood paintings becoming icons, selling out at exhibitions, proving American women could lead the creative industry without dependence. Marcus, now in exile in a hidden corner of California, watched from afar with belated remorse, realizing ambition had cost him not just the empire but his soul. Zoe, alongside Elise in support projects, found true peace, transforming their relationship from foes to steadfast allies. Audiences, especially U.S. women, felt deeply inspired, with overflowing comments on how Elise taught them to rise from pain, turning the story into a vivid lesson on resilience and justice. In the brightly lit Los Angeles hospital room, Elise gave birth to her son, little Alex, cradled in the warm embrace of Lan and Zoe, who had become pillars in her healing journey from Marcus's devastating collapse. From the ashes of betrayal and failure, Elise held the baby tightly to her chest, whispering promises to teach him how to paint and how to be strong, each word like a brushstroke painting a brighter future than ever before. Baby Alex, with eyes as clear as a California dawn, became her new source of inspiration, reminding Elise that motherhood was the power to overcome every adversity, transforming pain into sparkling hope, reigniting a fresh vitality in her once shattered heart. Would that healing journey open new doors, or was it just the beginning of a true rebirth? With inner strength ignited by motherhood,
Elise opened her own gallery named Win Art Space in the artistic Silver Lake district, where the creative atmosphere overflowed like vibrant color patches on her canvases, symbolizing the journey from darkness to light. Victor Reyes, deeply impressed by Elise's resilience and talent after the trial, invested heavily to turn it into a hotspot for female artists, a space not just for displaying art, but for nurturing dreams obscured by the male-dominated system. At the crowded opening under shimmering neon lights, Elise stood there with a steadfast gaze, affirming that this was not merely a gallery but a community, where her paintings of motherhood and women's strength sold out completely, proving that American women could lead the creative industry with their own hands and hearts, inspiring thousands following on social media. Have you ever imagined that a gallery could become a symbol of change, leaving you regretful if you don't follow its spread? Inspiration from Elise's story spread powerfully, like undercurrents, with waves of letters from American women arriving from everywhere, from single mothers in the Midwest to young artists in New York sharing experiences of stolen talent in the competitive and biased art world. Elise initiated a fund to support young painters, emphasizing that artistic talent needed recognition, especially from women, those often pushed into the shadows by manipulation and prejudice. Zoe, in her enthusiastic advisory role, joined the fund vigorously, sharing experiences from her remorseful journey to help female artists avoid traps, creating a solid support network across America, where thousands of women found hope and strength to pursue dreams, turning personal stories into a broad movement against injustice. What would happen when that inspiration touches millions of hearts? And would Marcus truly regret in the shadows of exile? Marcus, now living in exile in Mexico, under the shade of failure and isolation, watched from afar on social media with belated remorse, gnawing like dark brushstrokes on the canvas of his life, witnessing Elise's gallery shining brilliantly. From art king to sidelined outcast, Marcus had to face lasting consequences. Reputation shattered, friends turning away, and each post about Elise's success like a cruel reminder of irreparable mistakes. Meanwhile, Elise held Alex under the warm California sunshine, painting new works about motherhood and women's strength, deeply inspiring American audiences that from ashes, anyone could rebirth stronger, leading the community toward a fairer future in the creative industry. Beneath a Los Angeles sunset burning the horizon in shades of crimson and gold, Elise stood by the tall glass windows of the new art space, cradling little Alex as he scrawled uneven lines across a crisp sheet of white. Each childlike stroke felt like a sacred emblem of renewal marks born from her long, arduous journey back to wholeness. Around them, the gallery pulsed with light, her post-motherhood paintings breathing life into every corner. It was no longer just a place to display art. It had become a sanctuary for stolen dreams to be restored, a beacon for women carving their place in the creative world. Here, thousands of American women burdened by betrayal and prejudice found the spark to rise again. Elise leaned close to her son, whispering about that night the slap that once humiliated her now transformed into a parable of rebirth. Each word she breathed felt like a warm brushstroke on a vast new canvas, promising that even in the deepest pain, color can bloom. Would this lesson ripple outward, stirring hearts desperate for hope, or was it simply the closing chapter of her own healing? The gallery's triumph outpaced every dream she once dared to imagine. Under the neon glow of Silver Lake, exhibitions spilled over with guests. Her canvases' vivid tapestries of motherhood and female strength vanished from the walls as quickly as they were hung, each sale sparking national conversations about hidden talent. Elise stood not only as an artist but as a cultural icon, her voice carrying into a TED Talk stage where the spotlight caught the unflinching resolve in her eyes. "We women," she declared, "do not just survive, we blaze." The room erupted in applause, the American audience recognizing in her their own battles against manipulation. From the Young Painter Support Fund she launched, hundreds of women discovered their paths, weaving a community inside the gallery's walls. Even Zoe, now an advisor, poured her hard-earned lessons into helping the next generation avoid the traps they both knew too well, proof that women united could change the pulse of the entire industry. Have you ever felt how a single TED Talk could become a tidal wave, shifting lives far beyond the room that birthed it?
The moral of Elise's journey rang sharp and clear. Never let anyone steal your dreams, for talent is your unshakable core, and motherhood an eternal force that can break any chain. Marcus, the once crowned king of the art world, was left in ruins, his gallery dismantled, his name erased, wandering in exile with nothing but regret. Elise, in contrast, held everything that mattered. Alex's laughter as a constant sun, a luminous career, stretching forward, and the rarest freedom of all the power to paint her own destiny. Across America, women of every background shared her story online, treating it like a flare in the night sky, proof that betrayal can seed victory. She became a lighthouse for the weary, a living testament that the American dream may fracture but can always be rebuilt, stronger than before. What might change in your own life if you dared to live by that truth, and could this ending simply be the prologue to another beginning? If you've walked through pain like hers, remember Elise, the woman who turned a public slap into the first step toward glory. Like this story if it stirs your heart, share in the comments how you would reclaim justice, and subscribe to witness more journeys alive with courage. Under that fiery sunset, she painted on, Alex tucked close against her heart, knowing her tale was not an ending, but an open door toward an endless horizon where talent and the love between mother and child form an invincible crown, proving that from ashes, the queen will always rise. Slap.
Oh!
The crack of Ethan Blackwell's hand against his pregnant wife's cheek sliced through the glittering air of the Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom. Gasps rippled through New York's elite, champagne glasses trembling mid-air, as his mistress, Isabella, stood frozen beside him. Within seconds, the scene blazed across social media, scandal devouring the city's gossip circuits. But behind Sophia's glassy stare was a storm, once the radiant bride in a storybook romance, now a woman tasting betrayal and humiliation in front of the world. Ethan, blind in his arrogance, had no idea that the secret she carried would one day shatter his empire and rewrite their fate. If you've ever known the sting of betrayal, prepare yourself. This is a story you won't be able to turn away from until the very last breathless moment. From the shadowed, grit-stained streets of Detroit, Michigan, where the American dream shimmered like a mirage just out of reach, Ethan Blackwell emerged as a living emblem of relentless will. Born into a blue-collar family with a father laid off from the assembly line and a mother grinding through night shifts to keep food on the table, Ethan learned early how unforgiving the streets could be. Nights spent hunched over borrowed textbooks beneath the flicker of street lamps, days juggling odd jobs from scrubbing windshields to hauling newspapers, each moment tempered a boy into a man driven not just by hunger for wealth, but by a need to command the respect of the very world that once looked down on him. Those early scars became the steel in his spine, shaping the figure New York's power circles now applauded. But was that dream unbreakable, or just a gleaming mask hiding a storm ready to tear it all apart? Through sheer force of will, Ethan carved his vision into reality. Graduating on a full scholarship earned through flawless grades and scrappy startup ventures, he hurled himself into the tech world like a force of nature. From a cramped garage on Detroit's outskirts, he built Blackwell Enterprises from nothing, investing in trailblazing innovations, then expanding into luxury hotel chains from the East Coast to the Pacific Shore. By 35, his empire stretched from cutting-edge AI labs to marble-floored resorts in the Hamptons, bringing in billions. He wasn't just rich, he was the embodiment of rags to riches, the kid from the slums now gazing out over Manhattan from a penthouse drenched in gold. The press crowned him the visionary tycoon, his striking grin as polished as the cufflinks on his tailored suits, his face a constant on the covers of Forbes and CNBC. Each morning, his chauffeured car slid to the curb of his 60-story midtown tower, his name in steel letters above the entrance, his workday beginning before dawn and stretching long past the city's midnight glow. Yet behind the glitter and grind, something in Ethan's carefully curated image was shifting, something dangerous enough to unravel it all in an instant. Inside Blackwell Enterprises, whispers swirled about Ethan's legendary drive. He championed schools in forgotten towns, funded young dreamers with seed money, and turned boardroom visions into gold. His handshake was firm, his smile magnetic, his instincts for market shifts uncanny. The media adored him, painting him as the rare blend of ruthless strategist and noble benefactor. But if you looked closely, the cracks were there. Sudden disappearances for business trips, late-night calls that had nothing to do with deals, a volatility creeping into his once steady demeanor. Meetings canceled without explanation. Sharp words cutting through the air for no reason at all. The atmosphere in his glass-walled offices began to feel brittle. Were these just the growing pains of an empire, or warning signs of a fracture that could bring it crashing down? And in New York, the city where success is measured in glass towers in the glow of Times Square, Ethan appeared untouchable. Not just wealthy, but a symbol of grit rewarded, the fairy tale every American chases. Yet under the gold-plated surface lay a secret capable of detonating his life, the mysterious absences, the rumors whispered by his assistant, each piece falling into place like a clock counting down. The skyscraper of his empire stood tall, but its foundation was trembling. So, what's hiding behind that perfect smile? Miss the next part and you'll never know the truth, the devastating secret poised to change everything. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe if you're feeling this ride so far. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? It's always incredible seeing our community come together from every corner of the world.
From the pinnacle of the American dream, where Ethan Blackwell's business empire shimmered under the dazzling lights of New York, his life appeared more perfect than ever before, all thanks to a woman who had swept into his world like a refreshing, invigorating breeze. Sophia Langford, the sole daughter of real estate tycoon William Langford, who had forged a colossal property empire from residential neighborhoods in Chicago to towering skyscrapers in Los Angeles, had become the final, essential piece in Ethan's mosaic of success. 2 years earlier, their wedding at the Plaza Hotel in Manhattan had become the event of the year, a lavish extravaganza where Hollywood stars glittered alongside business elites, adorned with fresh flowers imported from Europe and champagne flowing endlessly like a boundless stream. It wasn't merely a wedding. There was a fusion of two powerful lineages, embodying the might of resilience and family heritage, core values that Americans have always revered deeply. But could that union truly be a fairy tale, or was it simply a glossy veneer concealing the cracks that were slowly, inexorably emerging? Sophia, with her gentle and elegant beauty, was swiftly christened the graceful swan by high society. Not due to any ostentatious exterior, but because of the subtlety in every gesture, her lustrous golden hair cascading freely, her profound blue eyes emanating intelligence and profound compassion. She grew up enveloped in the opulence of the Langford family, yet instead of submerging herself in luxury, Sophia chose the path of philanthropy, devoting her time to children's hospitals in Boston. Those fundraising galas for children battling cancer, those heartfelt visits to struggling families, all of it elevated her to an icon of American kindness, a woman not only beautiful but also profoundly strong, contributing to community building in the same way her father constructed cities. When she married Ethan, Sophia felt as though she were living in a dream. A thriving husband, a penthouse overlooking Central Park, and the chance to expand her charitable mission through the funds of Blackwell Enterprises. The press relentlessly celebrated them as the ideal couple, with features in Vanity Fair describing the marriage as the merger of ambition and benevolence. But behind those beaming smiles on the cover photos, did Sophia sense that the dream was beginning to dim and that those minor fissures could precipitate a seismic upheaval? The news of Sophia's pregnancy propelled their story to unprecedented heights, acclaimed by tabloids as the next chapter in the Blackwell fairy tale. Paparazzi shadowed her every step at upscale clinics in Manhattan, eager to capture the instant she emerged with an ultrasound image in hand. The media devoted exclusive articles to the Blackwell baby, speculating about the luxurious nursery with soft pastel hues and imported toys. Sophia, with her hand tenderly resting on her swelling belly, experienced the profound joy of impending motherhood, a role she had always envisioned, mirroring the traditional American family values instilled in her upbringing. She persisted with her philanthropic endeavors, organizing fundraisers for abused women and homeless children, demonstrating that success isn't a signal to halt, but a catalyst to give even more generously. Ethan, initially, appeared to share in that elation,
with romantic gestures like presenting flowers and vowing a radiant future. But gradually the cracks began to surface, as subtle as scratches on the gleaming glass of the Midtown Tower. Have you ever pondered that beneath that facade of bliss, those minor shifts could foreshadow a tragedy of monumental scale? Ethan started frequently missing doctor's appointments, citing emergency meetings or sudden business trips to London. Romantic dinners were abruptly canceled at the last moment, supplanted by apologies via text, leaving Sophia to confront the anxieties of pregnancy in solitude. She consoled herself that it was the cost of success. After all, her father had also devoted countless hours to his real estate empire, and Ethan was constructing a future for their family. But deep within, an undercurrent of unspoken tension was infiltrating their daily existence. Ethan's distant stares, the late-night calls he attempted to conceal, and the chill gradually supplanting the initial warmth. Sophia, with her maternal instincts awakening, strove to maintain composure, persuading herself that every marriage encounters trials, especially in the whirlwind world of New York. She carried on with her charitable mission, her hands caressing her belly like a solemn vow to the unborn child. We will overcome. Nevertheless, those alterations were far from coincidental. They were harbingers of a greater secret, something stealthily eroding the family's very foundation. And Sophia had no inkling that her patience was on the verge of being tested to its utmost limit, leading to decisions that could alter her life irrevocably. If you miss the next part, you'll regret it, because you won't discover how that dark secret will propel her to the brink and the way she rises from it. From the opulent corridors of the Waldorf Astoria in Midtown Manhattan, where New York's elite often seek refuge to conceal their most intimate secrets, Ethan Blackwell began venturing into a parallel world. One where seductive allure transcended all moral boundaries. As the unspoken tension in his marriage to Sophia grew increasingly dense and suffocating, Ethan discovered an escape in these clandestine rendezvous, where he could momentarily cast aside the crushing weight of success and his looming responsibilities as a husband and soon-to-be father. Isabella Voss, a captivating art dealer hailing from Italy, emerged like an exotic, intoxicating breeze, with her raven black hair cascading freely and her deep brown eyes radiating an enigmatic, almost hypnotic mystery. She presented herself as an expert in European masterpieces, but beneath that elegant facade lurked a cunning scheme, where romance served merely as a tool to achieve far grander ambitions. Ethan, once a towering symbol of American grit and determination, was now ensnared in that swirling vortex, leaving audiences to ponder with a heavy heart. Could the raw power of ambition truly drive a man to forsake his very soul? Those encounters at the Waldorf Astoria swiftly morphed into a perilous, addictive routine. Ethan would stealthily slip away from his office, abruptly canceling vital meetings under vague and flimsy pretexts, only to rush into the private elevator, ascending to the penthouse suite, where Isabella awaited in a vivid red satin robe, her subtle perfume intertwining with the pulsating energy of the bustling city far below. Her magnetism extended far beyond mere physical allure, the flawless curves and tantalizing smile to a razor-sharp intellect, an uncanny ability to listen deeply and unearth the hidden depths within Ethan. He felt utterly liberated, as if unshackled from the relentless pressures of the Blackwell Enterprises empire, completely oblivious to his obligations towards Sophia and their unborn child. Isabella artfully steered their conversations from the realm of art to the cutthroat world of business, subtly proposing investment opportunities across Europe, where she vowed to expand his corporation's reach and influence. But lurking behind those intimate whispers, did Ethan ever sense that this enchantment was inexorably drawing him into a lethal trap, where loyalty was cruelly traded for betrayal? Not merely a lover, Isabella Voss exploited Ethan with exquisite, calculated subtlety, redirecting charitable funds from the coffers of Blackwell Enterprises into sham investments shrouded in deception. She convinced him that these sums would acquire rare and priceless artworks, broadening his influence in Paris or Rome, but in reality they flowed through shadowy offshore accounts,
part of an intricate money laundering web that Isabella had meticulously woven long before. Ethan, utterly captivated by her spell, approved the transfers without a moment's hesitation, viewing it as a bold strategic leap to propel the corporation to unprecedented heights, a choice that echoed the daring, risk-embracing spirit of America he had always worn as a badge of pride. Yet with every wire transfer, he willfully ignored the glaring red flags. Anomalous invoices flagged by assistant Mia Reynolds, probing inquiries from hotel staff Carlos Mendoza, who had recognized him from past charitable galas. Ethan even contemplated a lavish European getaway with Isabella, envisioning romantic nights along the Seine, entirely forgetting the devoted wife and child patiently awaiting his return at home. Were those escalating risks truly worth the gamble, when a single fatal error could obliterate not only his sterling reputation but the very American dream he had labored so tirelessly to construct? Whispers began to ripple through the hallways of Blackwell Enterprises and the rarefied circles of New York's high society. Employees murmured about unsanctioned trips. Assistant Mia detected unsettling shifts in his itinerary, marked by late-night calls from unfamiliar numbers and extravagant bills that clashed with legitimate business dealings. Carlos Mendoza, the hotel employee harboring memories of Ethan from philanthropic events, inadvertently witnessed those tender, illicit moments, his loyalty to the Blackwell family stirring inner conflict, but ultimately refusing to remain silent forever. Ethan, lost in his trance-like infatuation, brushed aside every warning, arrogantly believing his power was impenetrable enough to veil it all. But an unforeseen call, perhaps from an unexpected ally, was on the horizon, poised to shatter that impeccable facade and expose the grim reality lurking beneath. And in that pivotal moment, would Ethan awaken in time to comprehend that this secret threatened not merely his marriage, but the entire empire he had poured his sweat and soul into forging? If you miss the next part, you'll regret it deeply, because you won't uncover how that call will plunge Ethan into an unforgiving abyss, and the profound ways it forever alters the destinies of everyone entangled in its wake. As whispers of Ethan's secrets began to spread like a toxic haze through the stifling air of New York, Sophia Langford, once an emblem of grace and resilience, was jolted by a text message that upended her entire world. It came from Carlos Mendoza, a middle-aged hotel worker at the Waldorf Astoria, his earnest eyes reflecting a quiet integrity, who had witnessed Ethan leaving a penthouse suite with Isabella Voss. The attached photo, grainy yet unmistakable, showed Ethan stepping out of an elevator, a smug smile on his face, his arm draped around the alluring woman. Sophia, alone in her penthouse overlooking Central Park, felt her heart constrict as if gripped by an iron fist. The agony of betrayal crashed over her like a tidal wave, causing her to clutch her pregnant belly with trembling hands, not just from the sting of deceit, but from a gnawing fear for her unborn child's future. Could a woman as formidable as Sophia maintain her composure in the face of such undeniable evidence, or was this the spark igniting a battle for justice that every American woman might fiercely relate to? With a heavy heart, Sophia arranged a clandestine meeting with Carlos at a quiet cafe in Central Park, where ancient trees shielded them from the prying eyes of the bustling crowd. Carlos, his warm voice carrying a Hispanic lilt, a testament to America's vibrant diversity, recounted what he had seen. Ethan's late-night visits to the hotel, the unfamiliar scent of exotic perfume, and his hurried departures. He offered not only additional photos, but also his reason for coming forward. His mother had once been aided by Sophia's charitable foundation, and he could no longer stay silent in the face of such injustice. Sophia, her face pale but her eyes resolute, confirmed the betrayal with a searing pain that cut deep. It was no longer a vague suspicion, it was a brutal reality, forcing her to recall those long nights when she comforted herself that Ethan was merely consumed by work. Now, that pain was alchemizing into strength, a strength American women often unearth in moments of despair, a reminder that resilience is not about enduring, but about acting decisively. But would this evidence be enough for her to forge ahead, or were more pieces needed to complete the dark puzzle unfolding before her? After the meeting, Sophia refused to drown in tears. Instead, she immediately contacted Elena Kim, a sharp-witted Asian-American lawyer in her 50s, renowned for defending women in Manhattan's complex divorce cases. In a discreet office near Wall Street, Elena listened intently as Sophia recounted the details of their marriage agreement, a document once signed in joy, now transformed into a legal weapon. With deft precision, Elena analyzed clauses concerning infidelity and financial misconduct, advising Sophia to gather more evidence to secure the rights of both herself and her child. Sophia, her maternal instincts surging like a protective tide, sensed a glimmer of hope, piercing through the anguish. This was not just a personal fight, but a testament to the power of American legal justice, where the law could shield the vulnerable. Her father, William Langford, swiftly joined the fray, his real estate empire lending him the acumen to suspect irregularities in Ethan's finances, large transfers to offshore accounts, inconsistent with company reports. William, his authoritative voice resonant with the gravitas of a seasoned tycoon, urged Sophia to act, reminding her that the Langford family always stood firm against any storm. Could these suspicions lead to a revelation far greater, turning personal pain into a public scandal that would shake the city? Then Mia Reynolds, Ethan's loyal assistant at Blackwell Enterprises, became a pivotal piece of the puzzle. With keen eyes and a conscience weighed down by guilt, Mia covertly provided emails proving Isabella was extorting Ethan through the charitable foundation funds meant for impoverished children, now diverted to sham accounts. Mia, a young woman embodying the millennial American spirit, felt remorse for her prior silence but now chose to stand for justice. Armed with irrefutable evidence, photos, emails, and financial reports, Sophia devised a razor-sharp plan for divorce and a criminal investigation, transforming her pain into a strategic masterpiece. She had yet to reveal her own secret, a twist that could upend everything, forcing Ethan to confront consequences he never foresaw. It was the power of patience and intellect, qualities American women often wield to turn the tables in real-life sagas. But would Sophia hold that secret until the perfect moment, or would it erupt sooner than she anticipated? And the climax was drawing near, where the truth would explode before the public's gaze, transforming a personal scandal into an emblem of the fight for justice. If you miss the next part, you'll regret it deeply, for you won't see how Sophia's hidden twist will flip the script entirely, a game changer that alters everything forever. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. As the climax hung like a menacing black cloud over New York's skyline, where Sophia's secretive plans for divorce and investigation were steadily taking shape, the dark truth finally erupted at a charity gala for abused women, a place where the city's elite gathered to soothe their consciences with lavish checks. The Plaza Hotel, with its shimmering crystal chandeliers and marble floors reflecting sheer opulence, became the stage for a personal tragedy morphing into a public scandal. Sophia, in a flowing emerald gown hugging her pregnant belly, entered the ballroom as a beacon of American feminine strength, resilient, compassionate, and poised to champion the vulnerable. But no one could have foreseen that tonight she would become a victim on her own stage. Could an evening meant to honor justice become the moment that shatters a marriage and hurls a man like Ethan into a bottomless abyss? Isabella Voss appeared like a beguiling specter, gliding through the crowd in a glittering silver dress, commanding every gaze with her exotic beauty and confident smile. She had cunningly secured an invitation by donating a rare painting to the auction, but her true intent was to flaunt her intimacy with Ethan. As Isabella approached him at the bar, lightly brushing his arm and whispering something that sparked his loud laughter, the guests began to murmur gossip, spreading like wildfire through a parched forest. New York's high society, accustomed to discreet secrets, now witnessed this overt closeness as a crack in a flawless glass facade. Sophia, observing from a distance, felt a chill run down her spine, yet she maintained her composure, reminding herself of her charitable mission, empowering abused women, a cause now piercingly personal. Her father, William, stood nearby with a martini in hand, his anxious gaze sweeping the room, sensing the shifting atmosphere. Were those murmurs the harbingers of a larger explosion, where betrayal would be laid bare under society's glaring spotlight? When the time came for the main program, Sophia ascended the stage with regal poise, her powerful voice resonating through the microphone, speaking passionately about empowering women, stirring words about inner strength, standing against abuse, and building a supportive community. Each sentence felt like an arrow aimed at men like Ethan, though she strove to keep her tone neutral. The audience erupted in applause, admiring the pregnant woman who still fought tirelessly for her ideals, an image echoing America's feminist spirit, from the suffrage movement to number Me Too. But behind her smile, Sophia struggled to stay composed, her heart pounding as she glimpsed Isabella and Ethan in a corner, their exchanged glances far too intimate. She pressed on with her speech, emphasizing that women deserve respect and safety, but each word now carried the weight of her personal pain, like a veiled warning of the storm to come. Assistant Mia, stationed backstage, noticed the tension and gently patted Sophia's shoulder as she stepped down, but nothing could halt the tempest brewing. Have you ever imagined that an inspiring speech could become the spark for a personal tragedy, leaving an entire city stunned? Suddenly, Isabella glided past Sophia with audacious bravado, grazing her pregnant belly, perhaps unintentionally, but in that moment it felt like a calculated provocation. Sophia flinched, gasping in pain, her hands clutching her belly to protect her unborn child. Ethan, watching from afar, charged forward with a face contorted in uncontrollable rage, not to comfort his wife, but to reprimand her for causing a scene. Before a stunned crowd, he raised his hand and struck Sophia's cheek with a resounding slap, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the hushed ballroom. Camera flashes from guests' phones captured the horrific moment. Sophia's face flushed red, tears streaming down, yet she stood tall, refusing to crumble. New York's elite gasped in unison, the scandal spreading like a virus across social media, with the hashtag number Blackwell Scandal exploding within moments. Ethan, blinded by his furious outburst, failed to realize that this act was not just violence but self-destruction, stripping away his golden veneer before the world. Could a single slap demolish not only a marriage but an entire empire, while awakening the true strength within a wounded woman? But Ethan remained oblivious that this act was merely the prelude to his downfall, as Sophia's hidden secret was poised to emerge, transforming the scandal into a beacon of justice. If you missed the next part, you'll deeply regret not discovering how the repercussions of that slap will cast Ethan into a personal hell, a twist that compels every American to reflect on the power of truth. From the moment that horrific slap echoed through the Plaza Hotel, igniting a scandal that detonated and spread relentlessly across New York, Sophia Langford ceased to be a silent victim. She rose with the fierce resilience that American women often unearth in moments when justice is trampled underfoot. Mere hours later, bolstered by her lawyer Elena Kim, Sophia filed for an emergency protective order in Manhattan court, demanding that Ethan be barred from any contact with her or their unborn child. The divorce petition followed swiftly, citing infidelity, domestic violence, and financial abuse accusations that sent the media into a frenzied uproar, transforming the story into a potent symbol for the anti-abuse movement within high society. At the same time, she sought to freeze Ethan's assets, from the Upper East Side penthouse to shares in Blackwell Enterprises, ensuring not a single dollar could be diverted further. This propelled a criminal investigation into money laundering, with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office delving deep into suspicious transfers to offshore accounts. Sophia, her hand gently stroking her swollen belly like a solemn vow of protection, felt a fresh surge of power, the power of American justice, where the law can dramatically reverse the fortunes of the wounded. Would these legal maneuvers be sufficient to dismantle Ethan's empire, or would darker revelations yet be required to seal its fate? Isabella Voss, realizing her extortion scheme had crumbled disastrously under the scandal's crushing pressure, fled hastily to Europe, perhaps Paris, where she had once boasted of her art networks. After attempting to squeeze more money from Ethan in exchange for silence on the money laundering deals, she was met with his cold rejection, now mired in utter chaos. She vanished from New York like a fleeting shadow, leaving Ethan utterly isolated, no allies left, no charismatic allure to mask his downfall. Interpol was alerted, but Isabella had planned meticulously, using hidden accounts to evade capture. Ethan, who had once prided himself on his elite network, now found himself shunned. Friends evaded him, partners severed ties, and the media painted him as a quintessential betrayer of the shattered American dream. That isolation was not merely physical, but profoundly emotional, leaving him to wander his empty penthouse, gazing out at the city that had once idolized him. It was a harsh lesson on the consequences of greed, a theme Americans often contemplate through real-life tales from Wall Street to Hollywood. But was this isolation the pinnacle of his torment, or merely a prelude to an even more devastating financial collapse? Blackwell Enterprises stock plummeted freely on the Nasdaq exchange, shedding over 40% of its value in mere days, as investors panicked amid rumors of money laundering and domestic violence. The board of directors, who had once lauded Ethan as the visionary tycoon, now convened an emergency meeting at the Midtown Tower, voting overwhelmingly to oust him from the CEO position, a decision embodying American corporate accountability where reputations can crumble in an instant. Ethan, sitting alone in his former office, watched the empire he had built from Detroit's slums disintegrate, with employees departing in droves and partners cutting all connections. He also faced criminal assault charges, backed by viral videos and witness testimonies from the event, evidence that fortified the prosecutor's case unyieldingly. In his deepening despair, Ethan attempted to reach Sophia through texts and calls, pleading for a second chance, but every effort was met with icy rejection, the protective order blocking all access. For the first time, he grasped that his self-built empire was not invincible, but as fragile as a house of cards before the wave of justice. Would this despair lead Ethan to genuine remorse, or was it merely a veneer concealing his lingering selfishness? Ethan wandered through his dimly lit penthouse, whiskey glass in hand, reflecting on his journey from poverty to peak, those sleepless nights in Detroit, now bitter memories. As everything crumbled from a single loss of control, he tried contacting William Langford, hoping his father-in-law might intervene, but received only silence, a rejection underscoring that American families do not forgive betrayal. The media coverage was relentless, with analyses on the fall of the American dream, turning Ethan into a cautionary tale for young entrepreneurs. In the depths of his desperation, he realized the empire he had constructed was shattering completely, from frozen assets to a tarnished reputation. But the real twist was imminent, as Sophia prepared to unveil a secret that would reverse everything entirely, not just about the child, but also the origins of Ethan's success. It was a moment where American justice shone brightly, where victims emerge as victors, reminding audiences that true power resides in the truth. Aren't you curious about how that secret will transform it all?
2 months after a scandal ripped through New York's elite like a detonation, reducing Ethan Blackwell's glittering empire to rubble, Sophia Langford stepped into a new chapter, one not of survival alone, but of transformation. It was the kind of resilience Americans celebrate in everything from Hollywood blockbusters to quiet, everyday acts of courage. In a premier Boston hospital, beneath the tender glow of the delivery room lights, Sophia welcomed a healthy baby girl into the world. The newborn's first cry rang out like a victorious anthem, life defying every shadow that had tried to consume it. She named her Hope, a living promise for the future, her silky hair and striking blue eyes mirroring Sophia's own. The doctors smiled with reassurance, but fate had one more twist to reveal. DNA results confirmed the child was not Ethan's. He had been infertile since a youthful accident, a truth he never knew, and one Sophia kept locked away to protect her daughter from a dangerous man. In that moment, truth became liberation, justice became a shield, and a once broken woman stood ready to rewrite her fate. Armed with DNA evidence as unshakable as the Declaration of Independence, the Manhattan court granted Sophia full custody and ordered millions in damages from Ethan's personal fortune. The judge's voice carried the weight of American fairness, declaring Ethan guilty of marital fraud by concealing his infertility, a ruling that tore apart their prenuptial agreement. Sophia sat in the courtroom, her shoulders squared, tears flowing not from sorrow, but from the profound relief of a burden finally lifted. Across the aisle, Ethan's complexion drained to ash, the tailored suit that once broadcast dominance now hanging loosely on a man crushed by his own downfall. The gavel's echo was more than a verdict. It was a declaration that American law protects the wronged and refuses to bow to abusers. But was this truly the closing act, or just the beginning of a deeper unraveling of Ethan's carefully crafted myth? The cracks widened when the truth about Ethan's self-made legacy came to light. His rise from Detroit's slums had been fueled not solely by grit, but by the quiet power of William Langford, his father-in-law, whose early investments and high society connections were the true foundation of Blackwell Enterprises. In court, William's icy testimony stripped Ethan of his last veneer, rebranding him as a counterfeit icon of the American dream. Coupled with money laundering charges tied to Isabella Voss and the very public assault on Sophia, Ethan's suspended sentence dissolved into hard prison time. Inside the frigid walls of a federal cell, he replayed his journey from poverty to pinnacle to ruin, haunted by the truth that blind ambition had devoured everything it touched. National outlets from CNN to the New York Times followed every twist, framing his fall as a cautionary tale of greed, hubris, and violence, forcing Americans to question what success is truly worth. But prison was not the bottom. That lay ahead. Isabella, who had fled to Europe, returned under a deal for leniency, laying bare Ethan's darkest dealings from illicit offshore transfers to the way greed had twisted him beyond recognition. Her testimony landed like final merciless blows, bankrupting him completely. His assets were seized to repay victims and restore stolen charitable funds. Stripped of everything, he limped back to a crumbling house in Detroit, a shadow of the man he once pretended to be, living in the same kind of hollow despair he'd escaped decades before. It was poetic justice, the kind Americans relish a villain meeting the fate he earned. Meanwhile, Sophia, now CEO of Blackwell Enterprises after William transferred his shares, rebuilt the company as a beacon of female empowerment, steering it toward technology that uplifted women and expanding philanthropy. She launched a foundation for abuse survivors, funneling millions from her settlement into programs that offered not just aid, but dignity. From the ashes of betrayal, she forged an empire no storm could shake. Sophia ignored Ethan's pleas for forgiveness, pouring her devotion into raising hope and fueling her mission. Her story became a rallying cry, culminating in a viral TED Talk titled From Betrayal to Inner Strength. Standing under the spotlight, she spoke as both mother and warrior, a living reminder that the American spirit honors not the fall, but the rise. Her journey from victim to victor resonated across the globe, proving that even in the wake of destruction, the human heart can build something greater. If her story moves you, like, share, and subscribe, because every voice raised in hope makes the next victory possible. Oh my God, he just slapped his pregnant wife, right in front of his mistress. The gasp tore through the glittering Boston gala like shattering glass. Under 1,000 unblinking eyes, the echo of that slap cracked the air, sharp, merciless, impossible to ignore. There he stood, the millionaire husband, smug and untouchable. Beside him, the mistress, lips curling in cruel satisfaction. And between them, the pregnant wife, her grace unbroken, even as her cheek burned. What no one in the room realized was the cruelest twist of all. This humiliated woman was the true architect of the empire that had made Gabriel rich. And tonight, before the last champagne glass stilled, she would finally break her silence. Brilliant lights cascaded over the grand facade of Boston Symphony Hall, a temple of history now transformed into the stage for a gala unveiling a groundbreaking leap in biotechnology. Outside, the media had gathered since early afternoon, cameras poised like watchful predators. Inside, marble floors shimmered beneath sweeping gowns, tuxedos glided through the crowd with effortless grace, crystal glasses chimed in harmony with a proud swell of classical music. America's elite moguls, investors, and the sharpest minds in science had assembled, not merely to witness innovation, but to exalt the man anointed as the face of a new era, Gabriel Stone. He moved through the crowd as though the room itself had been built to frame him. Tall, immaculate, his black tailored suit cut to perfection, every line speaking of power. His smile was measured, warm enough to charm, calculated enough to conceal. At his side was Victoria Stone, his wife, her second trimester pregnancy, subtly shaping the silk of a deep ocean dress. She did not glitter like the others. Her beauty was quiet, anchored, unshaken. She was the unseen architecture of his success, steadfast, necessary, invisible. Across the room, another woman drew the eyes, Marina Cole. Brown waves brushed against a porcelain face. Her gaze was both seductive and shrewd. Once a rising star in academia for her visionary research, Marina had become the subject of whispered rumors. Though never confirmed, her frequent appearances beside Gabriel on foreign stages, at elite summits, had made the story all but official. The evening began with a sleek time-lapsed video. Stone Biotech's meteoric rise from a cramped lab to a glittering glass empire. Gabriel's leadership unfurled like a corporate fable. Applause swelled as the screen faded. He took the stage, owning the room with a voice tuned to inspire. He spoke of revolutionizing regenerative medicine, wove gratitude to his board, investors, and the brilliant minds who made tonight possible. But through every polished word, one name never crossed his lips, Victoria's. When his speech ended, Victoria stepped forward. One hand curved protectively over her belly, her smile courteous yet unreadable. The room hesitated, uncertain if she belonged in the frame. Marina, stationed at the stage's edge, stiffened like a warning cord. Victoria approached Gabriel, lifting her hand as if to offer congratulations. And then Marina's voice, smooth and venom-laced, sliced the air. "You've always known how to stand beside the spotlight, haven't you?" The world seemed to still. Gabriel turned, not the composed CEO now, but a man stripped to raw anger. Without a word, his hand arced and struck Victoria's cheek. The sound cracked like a whip in the hall, not enough to fell her, but enough to rip apart the illusion they'd worn for years. A glass shattered, cameras flared. A gasp, sharp as glass, cut through the silence. Marina's eyes widened, shock betraying her composure, every gaze fixed on Victoria. She did not cry, she did not recoil. She stood, a hand to her cheek, the other guarding her child. Her eyes locked on Gabriel's raid, not with pain, but with a chilling calm, the stillness before the ocean rises to swallow the shore. The slap had not broken her, it had only confirmed what she had long known. In a world that worships image, she had been struck down beneath its harshest spotlight. Yet she remained unyielding, stepping away from the stage with deliberate slowness like a woman charting with surgical precision the opening move of her counterstrike. Victoria left the gala in silence. Not a glance back, not a single word of explanation. Behind her, the lights still blazed, and the classical music still played, as if nothing had just happened. But inside her, that night was no longer a celebration. It had become a deep, cold cut, striking straight at the heart of everything she had fought to protect. The car took her back to the estate in West Boston, where rows of tall pine trees stood like quiet sentinels, watching her every move. No driver, no security, no one to escort her. She opened the heavy wooden door herself, walked through the grand hallway that still carried the scent of orchids from the evening's festivities, and quietly closed the door behind her, slowly, carefully, as if afraid to shatter the silence that now wrapped itself around her. Her footsteps echoed across the marble floor in the vast, empty space. Her dress remained crisp, her hair still in place, but something in her eyes had changed. It was no longer embarrassment, no longer shock. It was a quiet awakening, deliberate, unwavering like embers, reignited by a sudden gust of wind. Upstairs, in the second-floor study, a room Gabriel rarely entered, Victoria sat at the walnut desk. She opened an old drawer, revealing yellowed documents, an external hard drive, and a few faded, hand-drawn diagrams. Each item was like a scene from a film played in reverse. This wasn't just the place where she had once written her first papers. This was the true birthplace of Stone Biotech, a company the world believed Gabriel had built, but but which was in fact conceived from her hands, her intellect, and her dream. Memories drifted back like a thin veil of smoke. Years ago, in a small lab rented from Harvard, Victoria and Henry Liu, then just two young researchers had worked tirelessly on early gene editing technology. Sleepless nights, moments of doubt when the funds nearly ran out, heated arguments that ended with them rewriting models from scratch. It was Victoria who named the project. She wrote the first draft. She filed the grant applications. And she was the one who suggested bringing in Gabriel, her charismatic boyfriend, to be the public face of their team. Her mistake had never been in creating. It had been in trusting the wrong person. A week before the official launch, after funding was approved and branding finalized, Victoria, driven by blind faith, signed a temporary legal proxy, granting Gabriel authority to represent the business entity because she was pregnant and ineligible at the time. It was meant to be temporary, but after that, her name was never mentioned again. She stared at the original contract, where her name had been replaced by an amendment. The handwriting was unmistakable. The dates matched. Every piece of evidence was there, not missing, merely buried beneath her silence. She picked up her phone. Under the soft glow of the amber desk lamp, her fingers hovered over a name she hadn't called in years: Henry Liu. 2 rings, and then a familiar male voice came through, hesitant at first, then overcome with emotion when he heard her name. The call didn't last long. Henry, now an independent researcher who had quietly exited the company after realizing Victoria had been pushed into the shadows, needed no convincing. He promised to come soon. "It's time you take back what's always been yours," he said. Immediately after, Victoria opened her laptop. She navigated to an encrypted folder, typed in a name she'd only heard mentioned by other female founders who had faced similar betrayals: Emma Ward. A sharp, relentless attorney, known for handling intellectual property battles and founder rights disputes. One short email, with the contract attached. The subject line read, "I am the rightful founder, and I intend to prove it." She hit send. Her hand didn't tremble. On the wall, an old photo of her and Gabriel as university students hung slightly askew. Victoria walked over to straighten the frame, but paused and took it down. Sometimes, to rebuild an empire, one must begin by clearing the walls. The meeting didn't take place in a law office or a lab. Victoria chose an old cafe at the end of Tremont Street, where the lighting was dim, the wooden chairs were worn, and the scent of espresso mingled with the soft drizzle of a late afternoon rain outside. No cameras, no eyes from the media, no familiar faces, only the past and the truth waiting to be brought into the light. Henry Liu arrived on time, carrying the same old backpack he had used during their early research years. No hugs, no drawn-out small talk, just a look filled with quiet respect and the unspoken ache of long-standing regret. They had once been teammates, sweating through endless white nights for a shared scientific dream. And then, everything dissolved. Victoria vanished from the founding chart, and Henry, unable to stomach the board's whitewashing, left in silence. The USB was placed on the table like an offering, small, quiet, but weighted with the power of a beginning. Inside were the original blueprints bearing Victoria's signature video footage of her presenting the technology to the founding team, and a string of unpublished internal emails, each line affirming her key role before everything was restructured through legal manipulation. The meeting lasted just over 20 minutes. No need for lengthy explanations. Everything that needed saying was already there in the eyes of two people who had once shared an ideal and now a single goal: to reclaim justice for the truth. Later that afternoon, Emma Ward, wearing a black coat, seated in a small but tastefully arranged apartment, opened the files Henry had sent. She wasn't surprised. Lawyers like Emma had seen many names stolen, especially in the tech world, but what caught her attention was the solid logic behind every piece of evidence Victoria provided, not just complete, but strategic. Enough not only to sue, but to trigger a devastating wave of media consequences if released at the right moment. During a video call, Emma looked straight into the screen. "You don't just have evidence. You have the moral grounds, and now, the perfect timing to strike at what Gabriel fears most: his reputation." That very night, an anonymous email was sent to all senior staff at Stone Biotech. It wasn't an accusation. It was simply an excerpt from an old research draft, signed Versus, accompanied by an image of Victoria in a lab, presenting the core biological model upon which the company had been built. No one knew who had sent it, but those who had worked during the early days, especially those who remembered her face and voice, began to whisper. The next day, a manila envelope arrived at the company's internal communications office. Inside was a copy of the original founding contract, with a thin red note scribbled on top. Check the real author's name. No return address. No signature. Yet former employees, those who had been transferred, sidelined, or quietly let go, began sharing scanned copies among themselves. Gabriel didn't react immediately. He didn't yet know who was behind it, and his need for control made him believe he still had the upper hand. But Marina, more perceptive, sensed the shift. The nods during meetings felt hollow. The executive team began raising questions about founder equity. An anonymous article appeared on a respected science forum, referencing a woman erased from a major biotech company due to personal complications. No names were mentioned, but the details were unmistakable to insiders. Marina sat alone in her office, staring out the window toward downtown Boston. The sky was heavy, a dull gray. In her chest, something stirred a weight, a tension. She had thought Victoria was gone forever, but no, this woman wasn't returning with tears. She was returning with calculated resolve. Victoria didn't need to knock on the door. She was already inside, using memory, quiet alliances, and the lingering trust that had never fully died in those who once knew who she truly was. What was beginning to crumble inside the company wasn't just the power structure, it was memory. And in the shadow of altered contracts, behind the flickers of doubt in morning meetings, an old connection was fracturing from within. A friendship that was once genuine between two women, now silent rivals. Henry was the one who rekindled the spark. In his personal archive of research data, buried among dozens of folders, was one labeled Phase Zero. Deep within were clips, notes, and photographs from the earliest days in their first lab, when Stone Biotech hadn't yet taken that name and was merely a trio of young, hungry dreamers, Victoria, Marina, and Henry himself. Back then, Marina wasn't a competitor. She was the one who sat with Victoria, counting every dollar to buy reagents. She was the one who fell asleep at her desk only to have Victoria cover her with a thin blanket. She was the one who cried when experiments failed, then laughed when they rewrote the entire model together overnight. Henry called Marina to the old lab, now his private office. The equipment was gone, replaced by skewed diagrams on the walls and a whiteboard still stained with faded markers from their last brainstorming session. Marina entered cautiously, her gaze quickly drawn to a small photo frame on the desk, a snapshot of her and Victoria beaming, holding the very first reaction flask they had created together. A moment she had buried deep. Henry didn't scold. He simply placed a tablet before her and pressed play. The footage showed Victoria in a white lab coat, explaining the gene editing mechanism they pioneered, while Marina, standing just behind, took notes intently and turned to smile with unmistakable pride. No words were needed. The truth was loud enough to silence every justification Marina had rehearsed. After Henry left, only she remained, surrounded by four walls and a past awakening from dormancy. Marina sat down, her hands covering her face. She didn't cry right away. There were only sharp, shallow breaths, as if shame itself were too heavy to voice. But finally, the tears came, not from fear of exposure, but from understanding the cruelest thing she had done wasn't betraying science. It was betraying someone who once loved her like a sister. Gabriel had never made her any real promises, just compliments, vague offers of a deserving position, an expensive pair of heels and dinners outside the office. But Victoria had trusted her enough to share the original research, even to co-sign in the early stages. What Marina had traded that friendship for in the end was merely a supporting role in a man's power play. That night, Marina left the company quietly, before the official end of the workday. She went to Victoria's apartment, where only soft, yellow light spilled from the window. She brought no apology, no gift. Only herself, exhausted, honest, and undone. Victoria didn't seem surprised when she opened the door. Her gaze was calm, not cold, not warm. Marina stood for a few seconds in silence, then took a seat when signaled. No words passed between them for several minutes. None were needed. The air was dense enough to carry both their past and whatever future remained. At last, Victoria spoke, not with bitterness, not with heat, more like someone quietly stating a conclusion after hundreds of controlled trials. What belongs to me I will take back. No revenge, just what's right. Marina said nothing. She bowed her head, but in her tear-brimmed eyes something had shifted. No longer ambition, but genuine remorse. Within Victoria, there was still a fracture, one that time alone might not heal, but she understood one thing clearly. Her greatest enemy had never been Marina. It was the system that allowed men like Gabriel to build empires on the backs of others, and Marina too had been a casualty in a game she thought she was winning. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. That morning, Boston was draped in a light mist, not thick enough to obscure the federal courthouse, but enough to slow anxious footsteps. Reporters packed the granite steps of the gray stone building. Microphones, cameras, and live stream phones were everywhere, giving the scene the intensity of a criminal trial. But this was a civil lawsuit about intellectual property rights, and the question of who truly founded the multi-billion-dollar biotech company. The hashtag number "Who is the real founder" dominated social media. Gabriel's supporters called Victoria a bitter ex-wife. Still, sympathetic comments, especially from women entrepreneurs and the scientific community, surged in the wake of leaked documents. All eyes were focused on one question. Could Victoria prove she wasn't just the CEO's wife, but the person behind everything? Victoria stepped out of the car without security or media entourage. Only Emma and Henry accompanied her. Marina, who had formally requested a leave of absence, was also present, but separated from the group, standing at the back of those waiting to enter the courtroom. She was no longer the ambiguous figure shadowing Gabriel. She was now part of the truth. The courtroom was large, stark white, and solemn. Gabriel appeared next, accompanied by a formidable legal team in sharply tailored gray suits. He entered like a champion being challenged, exuding confidence, and yet his eyes had lost their indifference. He knew. This day was unlike any board meeting he had ever controlled. The trial began. Emma rose and approached the stand with unmistakable poise, confident, incisive, not a gesture wasted. Her voice was calm, unforced. Yet every word she delivered felt like a precisely sharpened blade. The founding contract, hand-drawn schematics, lab log books with timestamps and locations, and video clips showing Victoria presenting the original gene editing system before Gabriel was brought in as the media face. The courtroom seemed to contract. All evidence was projected onto a screen. At one point, an email from Victoria to Marina appeared in full view. Here is the research draft for you to co-sign. This is the final night we worked before Gabriel made the announcement. Every timestamp, every file aligned. Gabriel's lawyers attempted to rebut, arguing she was a supporter, not the manager. Emma calmly presented the temporary power of attorney contract Gabriel used to claim legal entity status without any termination clause. Then Marina was called to testify. She walked forward deliberately. Her gaze was steady. She admitted everything, that she had been part of the founding team, that Victoria initiated every design, and that Victoria had entrusted her with the entire research until Gabriel offered vague promises of true authority. Marina lowered her eyes as she spoke. In that moment, the courtroom fell silent. No applause, no whispers, because her testimony did not come from vengeance, but from remorse, too late. Gabriel remained seated. He did not rise or argue. His face, seen for the first time, revealed something he had never shown others: loss of control. Every detail he assumed hidden, every memory he thought erased, came back in a way he could no longer deny. He looked at Victoria not as the woman he once believed would retreat obediently behind fame, family, and their unborn child, but as someone standing before him with dignity, demanding not pity, but justice. The first hearing concluded without a verdict, but public opinion was already swirling. Legal experts said the evidence scientifically and legally favored Victoria. Media coverage exploded with images of her walking out of the courthouse, one hand gently cradling her pregnant belly, a symbol of how true worth eventually reveals itself. In the car afterward, Emma turned to Victoria and asked, "Do you want to respond to the media?" Victoria simply shook her head. "Not yet. I don't need a media victory. I need to win on the side of truth." When the judge's wooden gavel came down, that sound marked not only the end of a trial, but the renewal of a woman whose name had once been erased from the dream she built. Victoria did not shed tears. She did not shout her victory. She simply clenched her hand, resting on her belly where the small life inside, not yet born, had already witnessed part of the truth being restored for its mother. The court officially recognized Victoria as the lawful co-founder of Stone Biotech. She gained control of 51% of the company, not just on paper, but in every strategic decision going forward. Gabriel, who once dictated every clause, every statement, every budget line, is now demoted to an honorary role, Senior Strategic Advisor. He still has an office and his name remains on the organizational chart, but he no longer holds real power. The media exploded with coverage, yet Victoria did not rush to the spotlight. She didn't need visibility. She needed time to do what she had been blocked from, rebuilding the company true to its foundational values. Her first meeting in her new role took place a week later. No champagne, no bright banners, just a simple boardroom where former employees, those who had left in frustration, and newcomers who knew her only through rumors, sat in silence waiting. When Victoria entered, no one stood not out of disrespect, but out of uncertainty. They were measuring what might truly change. But she didn't need applause. She moved to the screen and opened her first slide. One sentence appeared: "We were built by a passion for science. I am here to bring that back." Rather than speak about profit margins, she spoke of ethics, of intellectual property belonging not to legal departments but to the people who had sweated for it, of protecting young scientists from manufactured authority, and of a new vision, biotechnology, that heals people, not just enriches bottom lines. She announced the creation of an anonymous innovation fund where any employee could submit ideas, data, or initiatives without attaching their name until they were ready, and then be fully acknowledged once successfully implemented. She asked HR to review old contracts, ensuring everyone whose role had been erased would be invited back with a formal apology. A week later, investment funds began reaching out again. Not because Victoria had won a lawsuit, but because the market was shifting toward companies with integrity and transparency, and her leadership was reshaping Stone Biotech in exactly that direction. Gabriel still came to the office each day, but now the glass door no longer opened automatically for him. There were no more bowed heads when he walked in. He sat in an auxiliary room, one without a role on the executive board. His inbox identified him as internal advisor. No one forced him out. It was the truth that quietly removed him from power. In a brief moment, Gabriel glanced out into the courtyard and saw Victoria speaking with a group of interns. Her gaze was gentle, yet resolute. She was not triumphant. She did not seek revenge. And it struck him she had never been playing the same game. She didn't win. She simply reclaimed what had always belonged to her. Marina's return looked different. She resumed work as an independent researcher with no leadership authority, no title, no managerial power. But in her eyes, that was freedom. She no longer had to choose between ethics and ambition. She had made the right choice, though it came too late. In her private office, Victoria kept a lone whiteboard where she had written the first line of her new research. No traces of the past remained except one photograph, a snapshot of the group from years ago when she, Henry, and Marina were still young, eyes bright, pen in hand. Beneath the photo, she placed a small note, reading, "Truth does not need defenders. It only needs time to reveal itself." Not every triumph roars with fireworks. Some arrive on quiet feet, stitched into every act of grace, every altered glance, and each wound that dares to heal. For Victoria, the courtroom victory wasn't closure, it was ignition. She was stepping into a chapter where she would relearn how to trust others, trust herself, and believe that what was stolen could and would be restored. On the first morning after officially taking the helm, she entered her new office. It wasn't larger than Gabriel's once had been, but its wide windows overlooked the plaza below, where employees moved freely, not like pawns obeying command, but like people walking toward a future they believed in. On her desk, there were no flowers, no hollow tokens of conquest, just a laptop, its first meeting slide waiting, transparency, innovation, fairness. That same afternoon, Marina appeared not in a boardroom, but in the hum of the research lab. She lingered among the centrifuges, silently watching as Victoria guided a cluster of eager interns. She offered no interruption, no hurried pleasantries, only patience. When the session ended, she placed a single handwritten letter on the desk, an apology, scripted in neat, restrained lines. Victoria took it without a word. She didn't rip it apart. Days later, Marina opened an email from Human Resources. She had been kept on as a senior researcher, no managerial power, no public role. She recognized this as the deepest forgiveness Victoria could extend, and the truest test. Did she seek redemption or merely refuge? She chose redemption. Arriving before sunrise, staying past sunset, she unearthed old proposals long dismissed, mentored young researchers, and never claimed credit. Slowly, the wary nods from colleagues became real conversations, not because they had forgotten her past, but because they believed in her present. Gabriel's presence, once imposing, faded. He slipped quietly into advisory, trips his whereabouts, companions, and ambitions unknown. Victoria understood. Some only see themselves clearly after power is stripped away. A month later, in a new auditorium on company grounds, Victoria stood before hundreds of employees, old and new, at the unveiling of the next 5-year strategy. The room was stripped of spectacle, soft lights, a clean stage, a microphone, and truth that could not be rehearsed. She wore a simple white dress, one hand resting on her growing belly, a symbol of something far greater than vengeance, hope. Her gaze swept slowly across the crowd, past doubters, betrayers, and steadfast allies alike. "This fight was never mine alone," she began, voice steady, each word weighted. "I didn't just reclaim a title. I reclaimed a voice for every person who has ever had theirs taken. For those silenced because they lacked the CEO badge, the lawyer, or a name on an executive chart." Her eyes found Marina, seated quietly in the back. "But we will not be silent again. Not in this room, not in this industry. Once truth is spoken, it cannot be buried." Silence gripped the space then. One by one, people rose to their feet. No applause, no signal, only solidarity. A silent vow shared in every standing figure. Outside, dawn broke over the skyline. Victoria stepped out, not cloaked in status, but carrying herself with the unshakable certainty of a woman who no longer stood in anyone's shadow. She was not someone's wife. She was not the woman behind. She was simply herself. And this time, the future was hers to command. The automatic doors of Chicago General Hospital slide open in the dead of night, and Olivia Bennett, 38 years old and 6 months pregnant, stumbles through like a shadow fleeing from hell. Blood streams down from a gash on her forehead, her designer maternity dress torn at the shoulder. She screams, "Let me go," though no one touches her. Her husband, Victor Hayes, a real estate millionaire, follows with a counterfeit smile, masking the rage that just pushed her down the stairs. But tonight, a horrifying secret unravels. The surgeon who steps in is her billionaire godfather, poised to turn the tables. If you look away, you'll regret missing how a fragile woman becomes a symbol of strength, saving her unborn daughter from a cycle of violence. The curtain rustled like a whisper of a reawakened past, and Dr. Julian Sinclair, 62 years old, stepped into the room with the quiet authority that filled the cramped space around bed number 7, with the weight of a man accustomed to making life or death decisions in gleaming operating rooms. Julian was no ordinary doctor. He was an East Coast billionaire who had built a vast fortune not only through intricate surgeries but also through shrewd investments, saving thousands of lives while maintaining the humility that made him a revered icon. His silver hair shimmered under the fluorescent lights, and his pale blue eyes locked immediately onto Olivia Bennett, the young woman he had treated like a daughter since she lost her parents in a tragic car accident at 16. He had taught her to ride a bike without fear of falling, patiently solved complex math problems with her, and walked her down the aisle at her wedding to Victor Hayes, a decision he now silently regretted. 6 months had passed since their last awkward dinner, where Victor dominated the conversation with subtle jabs about modern marriage dynamics he deemed too old for Julian to grasp. But tonight, the surgeon's usual calm wavered as he took in the extent of Olivia's injuries. Julian's gaze swept over her body with the precision honed by 35 years wielding a scalpel. The cut on her forehead was clean but deep. The bruise around her left shoulder was days old, not from tonight. And the way she held her arm, as if shielding herself, spoke of defensive wounds far beyond a simple fall. He approached the bed with cautious steps, as if each one were part of a delicate surgical procedure. "Olivia, my dear," he said softly, using the childhood name she hadn't heard in months, his warm Boston accent carrying a rare tremble. Olivia tried to sit up, but pain made her wince, and she repeated the familiar lie. "It was just a fall down the stairs, Uncle Julian." Victor tried to help me, but Julian, with experience from hundreds of domestic violence cases, could distinguish between accidental and inflicted injuries. He pulled a wheeled stool closer, sitting so his eyes met hers, a gesture from her childhood, when he would lower himself to bandage a scraped knee or soothe an emotional wound, with the same gravity he brought to complex surgeries. Olivia felt her protective shell crack under that caring gaze, a tenderness free of conditions or expectations, something she hadn't received from Victor in months. She clung to the excuse that pregnancy hormones made her clumsy, but Julian gently shook his head, pointing out the bruise on her shoulder was at least 3 days old, the cut caused by a lateral impact, not a forward fall. He opened her medical chart, his voice soft but resolute. "You've been to the ER 3 times in 6 months, a sprained wrist from tripping on a curb, bruised ribs from slipping in the bathroom, and now a head injury. That's not clumsiness, Olivia, it's a pattern." His words hit her like a gentle shock, tinged with a dark humor as she thought of Victor, the man who prided himself on his perfect business plans, now crafting a pattern of violence so clear even an aging doctor could see through it from a mile away. She confessed slowly, her voice trembling, the credit card statements with strange charges, Victor's rage when questioned, and the push that was no accident but a punishment for her curiosity. Julian listened, his face hardening, but he didn't judge. Instead, he explained that her anxiety, depression, and self-doubt were symptoms of psychological trauma, the mind's way of shielding itself from overwhelming pain. He spoke of her parents, whose strong marriage was built on trust and respect, not the control Victor imposed. Olivia felt a flicker of hope mingle with familiar fear when her phone buzzed a message from Clara Whitaker, the 73-year-old neighbor with a sharp eye honed by 40 years watching Lincoln Park from her kitchen window. I saw everything. He pushed you down the stairs. I recorded it on my phone. Are you okay? That video evidence was like a slow-burning bomb, confirming Olivia's suspicions and turning her personal pain into a legal weapon. Julian read the message, his expression growing graver than ever, realizing this wasn't just about saving Olivia but dismantling Victor's entire world of lies. Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. The fluorescent lights buzzed like trapped insects, casting a harsh glow over the corridor of Chicago General Hospital, where Olivia Bennett, 38 years old and 6 months pregnant, sat huddled on a cold bench, struggling to conceal the fear gnawing at her heart. A gash on her forehead oozed bright red blood, dripping onto her torn designer maternity dress, a stark reminder that her polished exterior was merely a fragile facade. Just hours earlier, she stood in her luxurious Lincoln Park apartment, facing the icy glare of her husband, Victor Hayes, a 42-year-old real estate millionaire, when she dared to question strange credit card charges, jewelry she never wore, flowers she never smelled, dinners she never tasted. That question triggered a shove, not 3 but 5 stairs, sending her tumbling, clutching her belly to protect her unborn child. Now, in the emergency room, Olivia felt her baby kick hard, as if the tiny girl sensed the tension choking the air. Victor strode through the automatic doors with the confident swagger of a man accustomed to dominating every room. He didn't just own skyscrapers. He acted as if he owned the very air in the hospital. With meticulously groomed hair and an expensive suit, Victor embodied the American dream, the kind of man you'd see on the cover of Forbes. But beneath the glossy veneer lurked a controlling monster, ready to crush anyone who dared defy him. He stood tall, his deep voice echoing through the waiting room, spinning a smooth tale of Olivia's accident with the polish of a seasoned actor. She fell down the stairs, just 3 steps. Pregnancy hormones make her terribly clumsy. He chuckled lightly, as if sharing a humorous anecdote about his wife, but his piercing eyes swept the room, daring anyone to question his story. Nurse Maria Gonzalez, her thick New York accent honed by 15 years navigating chaotic emergencies, recognized the signs without needing a textbook. The cut on Olivia's forehead wasn't from a random fall. Its sharp, deep angle suggested a forceful impact. The way Olivia clutched her belly, avoided eye contact, and hunched her shoulders as if trying to shrink herself, screamed domestic violence in a language Maria had learned from countless similar cases. She approached, her gaze gentle yet resolute, striving to create a safe space for Olivia. "You okay, sweetie?" Maria asked, her voice laced with a touch of light humor, as if to ease the stifling tension, but Olivia only whispered, "I'm fine, just clumsy." The lie was as fragile as thin glass, and Maria saw right through it. Dr. Raj Kapoor, a young physician with a crisp white coat, entered with a clipboard in hand, his focus that of someone not yet worn down by night shifts. He requested a private exam for Olivia, but Victor immediately interjected, his tone shifting from feigned concern to the indignation of a demanding customer. "I've donated millions to this hospital," he declared, as if money could buy his right to stay in the exam room. Raj, with practiced calm, stood firm, citing hospital policy. Finally, Victor was asked to wait outside, leaving Olivia alone with Maria in a rare moment of stillness. The curtain was drawn, shielding her from Victor's controlling gaze, and Olivia felt her chest lighten, as if allowed to breathe for the first time in months. She touched her belly, feeling her baby kick, and a profound fear surged. Would her daughter grow up in a home where her mother was treated like property? Would she learn that love meant submission? Maria, sensing the pain in Olivia's eyes, placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle as a sister. "We've got you, all right?" she said, her New York humor softening the moment, as if talking about a mundane rainy day. But then, steady footsteps echoed down the hall, and the curtain trembled once more. A familiar doctor, his silver hair glinting under the fluorescent lights, stepped in a man who would change everything. The sharp scent of antiseptic mingled with the metallic tang of fear in Olivia Bennett's throat as her phone buzzed like a warning from fate, pulling her from the fragile flicker of hope sparked by Clara Whitaker's message. That video evidence, captured from the kitchen window of her 73-year-old neighbor, with a keen eye honed by 40 years watching Chicago's Lincoln Park, pierced the darkness like a beam of light, confirming Victor Hayes had deliberately pushed her down not 3 but 5 stairs, a punishment, not an accident, for her curiosity about mysterious credit card charges. With trembling hands, Olivia handed the phone to Julian Sinclair, her billionaire godfather, and he read the message with an expression graver than ever, his pale blue eyes flashing with the resolve of a surgeon accustomed to tackling the most complex cases. This video wasn't just proof. It was a lethal blow, transforming Olivia's personal pain into a legal weapon, her forehead wound perfectly matching the footage, not the clumsy fall Victor insisted upon. Julian, with a calm forged from decades wielding a scalpel, immediately called Sophia Reynolds, a 4-5-year-old lawyer with neatly pinned silver hair and steely gray eyes that carried a calculated intensity, renowned for dismantling wealthy abusive husbands who believed money made them untouchable. Sophia stormed into the room like a controlled tempest, her tailored navy suit amplifying her commanding presence, and she assessed the situation with the efficiency of someone who'd built a career destroying powerful men who harmed vulnerable women. They decided to confront Victor over the phone, turning the call into a trap, recording every word to make his manipulation undeniable evidence. Olivia, her heart pounding like a war drum, pressed the call button, feeling as though she were stepping into an arena where she was no longer a silent victim. Victor answered instantly, his voice booming through the speaker with feigned concern, like an actor playing the devoted husband. But Olivia, bolstered by Julian sitting beside her, his shoulders steady as a rock, and Sophia scribbling at a frenetic pace. He began the conversation by mentioning the credit card statements, charges for jewelry she never wore, flowers she never smelled, dinners she never tasted. Victor initially tried to stay composed, repeating the familiar lie about legitimate business expenses and accusing her of mental instability due to pregnancy hormones, but his tone soon turned icy, revealing his plan to declare her incompetent to seize custody of their unborn daughter. He threatened to prove she was an unreliable mother, using her history of anxiety and depression, which he'd cunningly recorded during therapy sessions to wield against her. A scheme so ironic, Olivia nearly let out a dark chuckle, picturing him as the successful businessman, now digging his own grave with his arrogance. The tension escalated as Olivia, her voice trembling but resolute, stressed that marriage demanded trust, not concealment. Victor lost control, inadvertently admitting his manipulation. He called her questions insulting, confessed to using their joint funds to manage stress from her constant suspicion, and issued criminal threats if she dared meddle in his private business affairs. Sophia, with a subtle, humorous smile, like a warrior watching her foe shoot himself in the foot, recorded everything, turning his words into ironclad legal evidence. Julian, still but with eyes sharp as a blade, guided Olivia through each response, helping her reclaim the strength stolen by months of silence. The call ended with Victor's growl, but Olivia felt a wave of freedom creeping in for the first time. She wasn't alone in this fight. Sophia confirmed the recording was criminal evidence, enough to turn the tide, and they began planning the next steps, with Clara's video at the core. The dim light from the computer screen in the underground meeting room of Chicago General Hospital cast a ghostly glow on Olivia Bennett's face, as if tracing the features of a woman who once believed she had a perfect marriage. Her heart pounded, not just from the recent confrontation over the phone with Victor Hayes, but also from the shocking revelations delivered by Dr. Julian Sinclair, her billionaire godfather, who sat across from her with eyes as sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. Through his private investigator, Julian had just unveiled a horrifying truth. Victor was not only an abuser with an iron fist and venomous words, but also a financial criminal. embezzling $23 million from Olivia's trust fund and investors, building a false empire on lies stacked as high as the skyscrapers he boasted about. Victor's real estate company, praised in business magazines, was nothing but a Ponzi scheme, bankrupt for 18 months, existing only to deceive trusting investors into writing checks while Victor lived lavishly and funded his betrayal. Olivia's stomach churned as Julian, with his calm Boston voice carrying the weight of a medical diagnosis, explained that the credit card charges she had questioned, sparkling jewelry, expensive flowers, dinners at upscale restaurants, were not business expenses but gifts for Mia Langford, a 26-year-old marketing coordinator who was a sham. Mia, with her radiant smile and Victor's company ads, was his mistress, accompanying him on business trips to Boston, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., where expenses were masked by fraudulent loans bearing Olivia's forged signature. Each forged signature stabbed at her trust, making her a victim not only of violence but of a systematic financial scam. Julian, with a surgeon's keen insight, revealed that Mia, realizing she was being used, had cooperated with the FBI to avoid prosecution, providing detailed documents on Victor's crimes, from wire fraud to money laundering. The truth hit Olivia like a cold wave, leaving her feeling both humiliated for believing Victor's lies, enraged that he had turned her into a puppet in his scheme. He hadn't just stolen money from the trust fund her parents left her. He planned to declare her mentally incompetent, using illegally recorded therapy sessions to build evidence that she was an unstable mother unfit to raise their child. The thought that Victor had methodically plotted to destroy her, body and soul, sent shivers down her spine, yet it also ignited a fire within her, a fire she thought had long been extinguished. Sophia Reynolds, the lawyer with silver hair and piercing gray eyes, sat beside her, typing furiously on her tablet, preparing a legal strategy like a general gearing up for battle. She confirmed that Clara Whitaker's video, capturing the moment Victor pushed Olivia down the stairs, combined with the recently recorded phone call, was a lethal strike to accelerate the FBI's 6-month investigation into Victor. In the stifling air of the meeting room, the antiseptic smell and the beeping of monitors reminded Olivia of her fragile reality, but Julian and Sophia's presence offered a rare sense of safety. She thought of Victor, who always bragged about his real estate empire, now resembling a reckless gambler, building a castle on sand, only to watch it crumble. A flicker of dark humor crossed her mind as she recalled how he once scolded her for overspending on groceries while he funneled millions into scams and his mistress. The earlier phone call, where Victor unwittingly admitted to financial manipulation and criminal threats, had become a double-edged sword. He thought he was controlling the narrative, but he was writing his own indictment. Olivia, bolstered by her unexpected allies, began to feel a newfound strength. She was no longer a silent victim, but the one holding the key to dismantling Victor's world of lies. The wail of ambulance sirens pierced the Chicago night from afar, a fateful warning tearing through the darkness, signaling the chaos erupting at Chicago General Hospital. Olivia Bennett, her hands cradling her 6-month pregnant belly, felt her heartbeat merge with the rhythm of her baby's kicks as the FBI sealed off the building and ushered her into a secure meeting room in the basement, a windowless bunker, cold as a fortress in wartime. Through the security monitors, she saw Victor Hayes, the millionaire husband who once anchored her world, now charging into the hospital with a pistol glinting under his coat, his eyes wild like a cornered beast. He aimed to force her to flee with him to Canada, escaping the tightening legal net, but Olivia, shielded by the protection of her billionaire godfather, Julian Sinclair, and lawyer Sophia Reynolds, was no longer the trembling woman who apologized for breathing too loudly. The security screens showed Victor moving through the hospital corridors, his steps jerky, fueled by desperate adrenaline. He confronted nurses, his voice a guttural growl demanding Olivia's whereabouts, declaring, "My wife belongs to me," with a possessive obsession that sent shivers down her spine. Gone was the polished businessman gracing magazine covers. He was now a fugitive, his false empire $23 million embezzled, a Ponzi scheme, and an affair with Mia Langford laid bare by Clara Whitaker's video and the recorded call masterfully orchestrated by Sophia. Sitting in the meeting room, Olivia felt a strange blend of fear and pity. Victor, with all his arrogance, now looked small, like a washed-up actor clinging to the lead role in a play with no audience. A flicker of dark humor crossed her mind, recalling how he once boasted of controlling every situation. Now, he was unraveling himself, stumbling headlong into the FBI's trap. Julian stood beside her, his gaze sharp as a surgeon's scalpel, watching the monitors with the focus of a doctor preparing for the most intricate operation. Sophia, with her silver hair and navy suit, typed rapidly on her tablet, coordinating with FBI agent Jennifer Walsh via earpiece, ensuring every exit was locked. Olivia, her hand gripping the phone tightly, answered Victor's call, his voice a mix of pleading and threats. He promised a new life in Canada, then swiftly turned to accusations, blaming her for destroying their family with paranoid delusions. But Olivia, fortified by Julian and Sophia's presence, responded with newfound resolve, declaring the FBI knew everything from financial fraud to domestic violence. Her voice no longer quivered but carried the strength of a woman who realized she no longer had to fear. Victor, losing control, roared through the phone, but each word deepened his indictment, captured by Sophia's team like legal bullets. On the screens, Olivia watched FBI agents in conservative suits silently encircle Victor as he tried to breach the maternity ward, where he believed she was hiding. His movements grew erratic like a trapped animal, but the agents, with honed precision, closed the net. Shouted commands rang out, and Victor, still clutching his gun, was handcuffed in the hallway, his panicked eyes now reflecting only defeat. He was read his rights, charged with 27 counts: fraud, money laundering, domestic violence, and witness intimidation. Olivia, watching through the monitors, felt a surge of emotion, not triumph, but relief, as if a boulder crushing her chest for 2 years had been lifted. She touched her belly, feeling her baby kick gently, as if the little girl knew the nightmare was nearing its end. Under the radiant autumn sunlight streaming through the Chicago courtroom windows, golden leaves twirled outside like tiny sparks of fire. Olivia Bennett, now 8.5 months pregnant, sat in the gallery, feeling her daughter kick fiercely within, as if the baby knew today was a day of destiny. 6 months ago, she was a trapped wife, bloodied in the emergency room, trembling under the controlling gaze of Victor Hayes, the millionaire husband who pushed her down the stairs. Now, she watched Victor, no longer the arrogant businessman who dominated every room, but a defeated figure in an orange jumpsuit, chains clinking, facing a 30-year federal prison sentence and a $3.2 million restitution order. Olivia felt no satisfaction, only a profound relief, as if a storm had dissipated, leaving a clear sky she never dared dream of. The trial unfolded with the stern weight of federal justice, the prosecutor listing Victor's crimes: fraud, money laundering, domestic violence, witness intimidation, like reading an endless catalog of sins. Clara Whitaker's video, the recorded call orchestrated by Sophia Reynolds, and Mia Langford's testimony painted an undeniable picture of a man who built an empire on lies and violence. Olivia, her hand on her belly, felt Lily Grace Bennett kick harder, as if celebrating the freedom her mother had fought for. As Victor was led away, his gaze brushed her one last time, but this time, Olivia didn't flinch. She met his eyes, no longer the woman apologizing for breathing too loudly, but a mother ready to shield her child from the darkness he embodied. 3 weeks later, at the very Chicago General Hospital where her nightmare began, Olivia went into labor under the soft glow of the delivery room. Julian Sinclair, her billionaire godfather and surgeon, delivered Lily with the tenderness of a grandfather and the skill of a man who had saved thousands of lives. Clara, the 3-year-old neighbor with a sharp eye, held Olivia's hand, whispering encouragements laced with Chicago-style humor. "This girl's gonna be tough like us city folks." Lily Grace was born at 3 a.m., healthy, with her mother's soft black hair and her grandfather's resolute chin. As Olivia held her, she felt a pure, protective love, so powerful it dimmed every prior notion of love she'd known. Lily would grow up free of the fear that haunted her mother, never learning to shrink herself to avoid anyone's anger. Olivia settled into a new life in a cozy Wrigleyville apartment, far from the lavish building where Victor once controlled her every breath. Julian, embracing the role of surrogate grandfather, spoiled Lily with books and toys, while teaching Olivia about child nutrition with the earnest humor of a doctor who once debated math homework with her. Clara became a self-appointed grandmother, watching Lily when Olivia returned to school to finish her social work degree, specializing in domestic violence counseling. She turned her trauma into a guiding light, helping other women recognize abuse and find escape. At her first support group, Olivia shared, "Strength isn't enduring in silence. It's daring to ask for help and believing in your own worth." Those simple yet powerful words touched the hearts of women grappling with the pain she once knew. Lily grew up in a world of love and stability, her radiant smile proof that a child could thrive without the scars of violence. Olivia, watching her daughter play, sometimes thought of Victor in his federal cell, where he'd remain until Lily was nearly 30. She no longer hated him, only pitied a man who destroyed himself with greed and control. From the ashes of her nightmare, Olivia built a new life, where love meant freedom, not possession. And you, my dear audience, brace yourselves for the next twist in this jaw-dropping story. So, before you get too cozy, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're truly loving what I'm doing here. And drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a thrill to see who's joining us from all corners of the globe.